Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Lam, sitting in for David Zhang. Here are today's top stories. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced her support for Kamala Harris. Both former President Trump and Vice President Harris held rallies yesterday. We'll have some main takeaways. California is officially tackling homeless encampments. The governor signed an order to encourage state and local agencies to act. First up, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has announced her support for Kamala Harris. This comes as Biden announced he is leaving the presidential race. House Democratic women are endorsing Kamala Harris president. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi joined the event. Pelosi's public support for Harris came about a day after President Biden announced his decision to leave the presidential race.
I know her officially, her strength. Kamala is about strength and determination in terms of public policy. We know most recently in terms of a woman's right to choose, but the list is vast, as Whip Clark mentioned. I know her personally. She's a person of great faith, of deep faith, and commitment to public service in the most unselfish way.
Pelosi also praised President Biden as one of the most consequential presidents in American history. This was hours after he gave a speech saying he withdrew from his re-election campaign. Biden said it was the best way to unite the country. The House of Representatives voted yesterday to create a task force to investigate the attempted assassination of former President Trump. The vote was unanimous, with 416 in favor and 0 opposed. The bipartisan task force will have 7 Republicans and 6 Democrats. Appointments will be announced Thursday. The task force will have subpoena authority as it conducts its investigation. It is required to deliver a final report on its findings no later than December 13th. China and Russia patrolling near American territory. The U.S. and Canada intercepted 4 Chinese and Russian bombers near Alaska today. These bombers are nuclear capable. A U.S. official said it's the first time the two countries were intercepted operating together. The Chinese and Russian bombers were in a joint patrol in the airspace of the Chukchi and Bering Seas, waters near Alaska. They were intercepted in Alaska's Air Defense Identification Zone. The zone is a stretch of international airspace that demands all aircraft identify themselves. It begins where a country's sovereign airspace ends. The U.S. military said these jets remained in international airspace and did not enter American or Canadian airspace, adding that this activity is not seen as a threat, but the U.S. would continue monitoring the situation. China said the joint patrol has nothing to do with the current international situation. Russia said it's a new area of joint operations. Just 2 weeks ago, 4 Chinese warships inched closer to U.S. waters in Alaska. The Chinese ships were in international waters, but still inside the U.S. Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. The zone spans 200 nautical miles from the U.S. shoreline. The Chinese ships told the U.S. Coast Guard via radio that they were conducting freedom of navigation operations. The U.S. Coast Guard ship monitored the Chinese ships until they left. A Florida man has been charged with spying for Beijing. The Department of Justice says for more than a decade, Ping Li spied on the Falun Gong community and other dissidents in the U.S. The DOJ announcements yesterday also accuses Li of spying on other Chinese dissidents and U.S. firms on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Ping Li is a China-born U.S. citizen. For over 13 years, he allegedly cooperated with China's intelligence agency, the Ministry of State Security. If convicted, he faces up to 15 years in prison. The case marks the latest federal action against Beijing's attempts to suppress the spiritual practice of Falun Gong in the United States. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is heavily persecuted by the Chinese regime. In May 2023, the DOJ charged 2 suspected Chinese agents with attempting to bribe the IRS. They allegedly aimed to revoke the non-profit status of an entity run by Falun Gong practitioners. The presidential race, with a new all but presumptive nominee on the Democrat side, is heating up. Both former President Trump and Vice President Harris held rallies yesterday, making their case to voters. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the takeaways.
At a North Carolina rally on Wednesday, former President Trump went on the offensive against Vice President Harris. He accused her of supporting illegal border crossings and mass amnesty for illegal immigrants. He said on his first day back in the White House, he will terminate, quote, every single open border policy of the Biden-Harris administration. National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd also criticized Harris at the rally for her performance on the border.
I gave her all of the policies that she needed, all of them, and she refused to implement them.
Judd endorsed Trump for the presidency. The rally marked Trump's first public campaign event since Biden dropped out of the 2024 matchup and Harris became the Democrats' likely nominee.
My fellow Americans.
The event concluded minutes before Biden addressed the nation to explain he dropped his re-election bid. Vice President Harris held a rally of her own in Indianapolis. She told members of the historically African-American sorority Zeta Phi Beta that they are not playing around, and asked for their help in electing her president. Harris says the country is witnessing a full assault on what she called hard-won freedoms and rights.
The freedom to love who you love openly and with pride, the freedom to learn and acknowledge our true and full history, and the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government telling her what to do.
Fox News Media proposed hosting a debate between Trump and Harris on September 17th in Pennsylvania. The news network sent formal letters to both campaigns Wednesday, suggesting that Bret Baier and Martha MacCallum host the debate. Trump says he's willing to debate Harris multiple times before the 2024 presidential election. Real Clear polling averages show Trump with about a 1.7% lead over Harris. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
California is officially tackling homeless encampments. The governor ordered state agencies and encouraged local government agencies to remove them from public spaces.
California Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order Thursday to direct state agencies on how to remove homeless encampments. This comes a month after a Supreme Court ruling allowed cities to enforce bans on sleeping outside in public spaces.
Today, we've invested now over $1 billion in encampment resolution grants, not only to clean up sites like this, but to address the underlying issue in the first place.
Newsom's order is aimed at the thousands of tents and makeshift shelters across the state that line freeways, clutter shopping center parking lots, and fill city parks. While Newsom cannot order local authorities to act, his administration can apply pressure by withholding money for counties and cities. Earlier this summer, the U.S. Supreme Court decided to enforce bans on sleeping outside in public spaces. The case was the most significant on the issue to come before the High Court in decades. It comes as cities across the country have wrestled with the issue of how to deal with a rising number of people without a permanent place to live and public frustration over related health and safety issues. California is home to roughly 1/3 of the nation's population of homeless people. Newsom touted that his administration has spent roughly $24 billion aimed at cleaning up streets and housing people, but acknowledged the stubbornness of the issue. Newsom's administration has also come under fire recently after a state audit found that the state didn't consistently track whether the huge outlay of public money actually improved the situation. Under Newsom's direction, state agencies, including state parks and Department of Transportation, would be required to prioritize clearing encampments that pose safety risks, such as those camping along waterways. Officials should give advance notice to vacate, connect homeless people to local services, and help store belongings for at least 60 days. Local cities and counties are urged to adopt similar protocols.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come right back. A domestic disturbance caught on video in Southern California. NTD's BJ Kang was on the scene as everything unfolded. A new Michigan law simplifies early release for inmates in poor health. A new report ranks the fittest cities in the U.S., but it says health of Americans have dipped due to factors like mental and physical well-being. Find out what the top cities are doing. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Lamb. A recent police stop in El Monte had officers pointing guns towards a car with children inside, as officers attempted to detain the driver in Southern California. NTD's BJ Kang was present at the scene as it unfolded.
A regular Tuesday afternoon was suddenly interrupted when a dramatic car chase in downtown El Monte turned into a potentially deadly police standoff. The incident starts when a white Toyota Tundra is seen chasing a black Chevy Trax down Main Street with a police interceptor in close pursuit. The Toyota turns down Tyler Avenue, pulling over to the side, and as soon as the vehicle stops, the situation escalates. My cameraman and I were first on the scene as it unfolded, with NTD building security cameras providing additional coverage. Just minutes ago, multiple squad police officer cars raced down here on Tyler Avenue, who seemed to be stopping this white truck right here. Cops got out of their cars and used their car doors as shields, hoisting their rifles and aiming them towards the truck. Police began to firmly instruct the man to cooperate, defusing the situation. That's when the driver of the Chevy parks behind the officers and exits her vehicle, attempting to help, revealing a harrowing detail. Fortunately, the suspect complies with the police and is promptly detained. He then confirms that there are 2 children inside the car. The officers then extract the children from the vehicle, marking the end of a nail-biting situation. El Monte Police Sergeant Ramirez gave us a first-hand statement about the incident.
So we had a radio call of a disturbance between 2 vehicles that were involved. We didn't know the occupants of the vehicle. We got a description of the vehicle. One of them was a white Tundra with a camper shell in the back. Information was provided to our dispatch about there possibly being a firearm related to this altercation. Hence why you guys, when you arrived, you probably saw what appeared to be a high-risk stop where you had officers pointing their weapons towards the vehicle. The driver was cooperative. He exited the vehicle. The children were safely taken into custody. The driver admitted that he is a security guard and legally in possession of a firearm. Our officers did check the vehicle with his permission and located the firearm. The dispute occurred between the driver of the truck and his significant other. There was no crime that occurred between both, but during the time that the altercation was taking place and as officers were observing the pickup truck did drive on the wrong side of the road. And so the suspect, the driver of the truck, is going to be taken into custody for misdemeanor child endangerment. One of the kids in the car did not have an actual car seat. And no other allegations, no other crime occurred.
After police defused the situation, the Toyota was promptly towed away, concluding a dramatic standoff. BJ Kang, NTD News, El Monte, California.
A new law has been signed in Michigan that would make it easier for people to be released from prisons if they're in declining health. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed a law on Tuesday making it easier for people in poor health and considered low risk to the public to be released from Michigan prisons. According to Families Against Mandatory Minimums, an advocacy group for criminal justice reform, the new law replaces a 2019 law that was deemed vague and difficult to apply, with only 1 person released under it. The Michigan Parole Board now has the authority to release individuals to a medical facility, hospice, or home, especially if they have less than 18 months to live. Maria Gollner, Director of State Policy at Families Against Mandatory Minimums, stated, "Their needs are too much for the Corrections Department, and they're not at risk to public safety." Governor Whitmer said that this change would save the state money and allow medically frail individuals to spend more time with their families in their final days. She stated the new law might apply to 12 to 20 people a year. People convicted of crimes that carry a possible life sentence aren't eligible. Christina Corona, NTD News.
The world has set a new record for the hottest day ever, exceeding the previous high achieved just 24 hours before. NTD's Christina Corona provides more details on this historic milestone.
According to the European Climate Change Service, Monday, July 22nd was the hottest day ever measured by humans, as countries across the globe continue to feel the heat. With heat waves spreading globally and wildfires affecting parts of the Mediterranean, Russia, and Canada, the global average surface temperature reached 62.87 degrees Fahrenheit on Monday. This was 0.11 degrees higher than the record set on Sunday, according to the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service.
Basically, we have just lived the warmest day in recent history, according to our data.
He notes that while this record is momentary, it reflects a trend we need to adapt to.
We know that the global mean temperature record typically happens in July, either in July or early August, and this is because we have most of the landmass in the northern hemisphere.
He suggests that some northern regions might experience even higher temperatures. The combination of high temperatures over land could be a key factor contributing to the heat wave. Climate scientist Joyce Kimutai explains that this year's record is unusual because unlike in 2023 and 2016, the world transitioned out of the El Niño in April. El Niño typically raises global temperatures by warming waters in the eastern Pacific.
It's really alarming that it's not an El Niño here and we're seeing this. And we've seen the signal come back to neutral and almost La Nina, actually. La Nina means there's substantial cooling happening.
However, every month since June 2023 has now ranked as the planet's hottest since records began, compared with the corresponding month in previous years. Before last year, the previous recorded hottest day was in 2016, when average temperatures were 62.24 degrees. Christina Corona, NTD News.
What do the top-ranking cities for fitness have in common? A new report ranked the largest American cities on fitness level and infrastructure. The aim is to promote longevity and movement. The American College of Sports Medicine and Elevance Health Foundation ranked the 100 largest U.S. cities in the annual American Fitness Index. Arlington, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Seattle, Washington took the top 3 this year. Arlington ranked first 7 years in a row.
But I wasn't surprised only because they've maintained their high personal health indicators, i.e. 88% of their citizens are active daily, when the average American, only about 25% of the U.S. exercises on a daily basis.
Stella Volpe, who heads the ACSM and has a PhD in human nutrition and foods, told NTD the top cities have resources to have better environments, thus access to being active. The report was based on data from the CDC and each of the cities. Arlington had the highest rate of residents exercising in the previous month, around 88%.
So a place like Arlington has really great access to their citizens for bike trails, walking trails, good sidewalks, a close proximity to parks, tennis courts, pools, recreation centers. And many of those citizens walk to public transportation, then go to public transportation and walk to their jobs.
It takes good infrastructure from the city as well as a lifestyle. Almost 40% of Washington, D.C. residents ate 2 or more fruits a day.
That exercise is medicine, but I don't want people to think exercise has to be go all out. It can be physical activity.
She says if cities have parks that aren't well kept, the city may get involved with citizens to do cleanups.
So it's more accessible to people to go there, play there, have picnics there, play soccer or something there. So that could be something small where they might not have the resources to make a whole big trail, but they could maybe put better lighting on some of their areas that might not have as good lighting so that people feel better about walking there, especially in the evenings. Those are 2 examples of what could be many, David, but those are some examples that could be done in cities.
According to Statista Research Department, in 2022, the United States was the highest spender worldwide when it comes to healthcare. As of 2022, the U.S. has spent over $4 trillion on healthcare. Worldwide, the World Health Organization says global spending on health continually rose for nearly 2 decades and reached more than $8 trillion in 2018. Volpe says physical activity and good nutrition could reduce chances of diseases, leading to lower healthcare costs and better quality of life.
Moving, walking, gardening, getting up, you know, every hour and just moving, dancing, little things like that all count toward minutes of physical activity. And if people can get moving, I think they'll feel better physically as well as mentally.
David Lamb, NTD News. Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. Chinese and Russian nuclear-capable bombers spotted patrolling near Alaska. The U.S. said it's the first time North American troops have intercepted the two countries operating together. More on China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Lamb, and that's our program. Have a wonderful evening.